My name is Leah. I am 29 years old. I am a licensed speech language pathologist assistant. I work with children from ages to pre-K past 22 with variant disabilities, and this is my second semester at Ball State.
Hi everyone, my name is Jackie Caton.
Hello all, my name is Ariel.
Hi, my name is Libby Staples, and the study my group chose to replicate is called Increasing Physical Activity Through Self-Monitoring, Goal Setting, and Feedback. This study was completed by Matthew Normand and was published July 2008 in the journal Behavioral Interventions.
I would like to start our presentation by reviewing the research study that our group has chosen to replicate, Increasing Physical Activity Through Self-Monitoring, Goal Setting, and Feedback, published by Matthew P. Normand in Behavioral Interventions. The purpose of the study was to increase each individual's physical activity through self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback. Measurements were taken to analyze if the effects of the intervention would result in an increase in physical activity in healthy adults who reported that they wanted to increase their daily movement. The number of steps taken by each member of the study was recorded using a wrist-worn pedometer. Baseline data was retrieved for 3 weeks prior to the start of intervention. After baseline was established, goals were set for each individual to promote an increase in number of steps taken from baseline to the following week. 4 participants enrolled in the research study: Mark, a 59-year-old male; Lena, a 55-year-old female; Alex, a 39-year-old male; and Chad, a 47-year-old male. Each of the members of the study willingly participated and were recruited via flyers and word of mouth in the community. All of the members stated that they exercised regularly or semi-regularly, but wanted to increase their overall daily activity level. All members completed the entirety of the study with the exception of Alex, who only completed 31 days of intervention prior to withdrawing. To collect data for the study, each member wore a pedometer on their wrist for the entirety of the research, which lasted 11 weeks. Weekly face-to-face meetings were conducted between the experimenter and the participant. Reliability checks were made during these meetings by comparing the reported number from the participant with the 7-day recording feature on the pedometer. The research study used a multiple baseline across participants with staggered baseline and an AB-AB reversal design. During baseline data collection, pedometers were masked in order to prevent formal activity feedback to the participants. Goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback were utilized as reinforcement procedures to promote a higher level of daily steps. Goals were determined by calculating the average number of steps taken per day from the previous week. If the participant reached their step goal at least 4 out of 7 days, then the goal was increased. If they did not meet their goal at least 4 days, then the step goal stayed the same. Self-monitoring was used by unmasking the pedometers and requiring the participants to report the number of steps taken each day to the experimenter by email. Once emailing their step total to the experimenter, verbal feedback was given such as, "Keep up the good work," or "You can do better, tomorrow's a new day." After completion of the study, a social validity survey was distributed to each participant for a self-rating analysis. The results of the study showed an overall increase in daily step totals for each member after the implementation of self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback. When treatment reversal was applied, the daily step totals began to decrease, and once treatment was reintroduced, daily step totals began to rise again. Alex withdrew from the study prior to completion, so data was unable to be obtained for the reversal phase. The results from the social validity survey reported that they believed the treatment procedures helped them take more steps each day and that the intervention itself was successful. This slide just presents a visual of the data graph showing the total steps taken per day across all experimental phases for each participant. Solid horizontal lines indicate the mean number of steps taken during each phase.
This study included 4 participants: Jackie C., a 23-year-old female; Ariel L., a 28-year-old female; Leah N., a 29-year-old female; and Libby S., a 23-year-old female. Each participant was recruited through their enrollment in the Advanced Applied Behavioral Analysis course through Ball State University. Each participant recorded their prior activity level as being moderate. In our study replications procedure, we measured our responses through permanent product recording via the pedometer. Each member wore either a Fitbit, an Apple Watch, or an Apple pedometer. Reliability checks were made weekly with all members through a group chat. We utilized the 7-day memory feature on all pedometers that were used. All data was contributed to a shared document to ensure participation of all members. For the experimental design, we used a multiple baseline across all participants. AB-AB reversal design was unable to be implemented due to the time constraints of the study. During baseline, all participants wore their pedometers daily. The 7-day memory feature was utilized to track daily steps, and each participant would put their data on the shared document. All participants were aware of the research and study replication. Each participant was instructed to make no changes in their daily routine until treatment implemented in order to retain highest level of accuracy. After baseline data was collected, personal goals were set by the participants on their next week's steps based on their baseline data. The total of steps taken daily were measured and found an average to create goals for the following week. The goal needed to be met for at least 4 days out of the next week. If the goal was not met, the goal for the following week would remain the same. During intervention phase, participants wore pedometers daily and at night would send their data steps to the experimenter. The experimenter would provide specific feedback and encouragement.
To assess for treatment fidelity for our replication project, each participant completed a survey on Google Forms every other Sunday of intervention. Due to the time constraints of this replication project, each participant completed the treatment fidelity survey only once. There were 5 yes or no questions on the treatment fidelity survey, and each question related to the steps that each group member needed to be taking as an individual participant, group member, and researcher, and were essential elements of replicating the study accurately. The questions on the treatment fidelity survey were whether or not we were wearing our pedometers every day, reporting our daily step counts to another group member every day, providing feedback on daily step counts to other members every day, providing participants with their daily step goal each week, and providing graphic feedback and praise or encouragement to the participant every Sunday. 100% of participants responded that they were wearing their pedometers every day, reporting their daily step counts to other group members every day, providing feedback to other members, and providing the participant with their daily step goal each week. 75% of participants responded that they were providing graphic feedback and praise or encouragement to the participants each Sunday. On average, the steps of the intervention were implemented with 95% treatment fidelity across the intervention phases.
The social validity survey distributed to all members of the replication process utilized a scale of 1 to 4, 1 being 100% agree and 4 being 0% agree. 3 team members responded to say that feedback given by another member of the group to increase their daily steps was 75% effective, while 1 member rated it as 50% effective. 3 members responded that their awareness of how many steps they take daily was increased through this study as 75% effective, and 1 member responded to say that it was 50% effective. 3 members reported goal setting increased their steps with 75% effectiveness, and 1 member rated it as 50% effective. And finally, self-monitoring was rated by 2 members as 100% effective, 1 member as 75% effective, and 1 member as 50% effective.
Inter-observer agreement for our replication study was collected by comparing the number of steps the participant reported to their group members each day to the number of steps that their respective pedometers indicated for that day. We used total count IOA by using the formula of the smaller count divided by the larger count multiplied by 100 equals the IOA percentage. For example, I reported on June 18th that I walked 18,836 steps. I then sent the screenshots shown below to my group using the activity app on my iPhone and showed the date and my step count. For the example given, IOA was calculated by dividing the number of steps I reported to my group members, which was 18,836, by the number of steps that my activity app showed, which was also 18,836, and then multiplying that result by 100, which got us to 100%. Throughout the baseline and intervention phases of our study, IOA was consistently at 100% accuracy.
Here is a visual of our replication data graph showing total steps taken per day across all experimental phases and participants, using the multiple baseline across participants' design. Dashed lines indicate phase changes, and solid lines indicate the goal that was set for each member each week. Here is my individual data results after completion of the study. I averaged 5,635 steps per day through the 18 days of baseline data collection, ranging from 3,367 to 7,466 steps per day. During the first week of treatment implementation, my weekly goal of 5,635 was reached 7 out of 7 days. During the second week of treatment implementation, my weekly goal of 8,208 was only achieved 3 out of 7 days. So if intervention had continued, my daily step goal would not have been increased.
During baseline, I averaged 9,141 steps per day across the 18 days of baseline data collection. My steps range from 3,342 to 15,531. My weekly goal during intervention phase was 10,490. This goal was achieved 4 out of the 7 days during the first week of intervention. My second week goal during the intervention phase was 11,107 steps. This goal was only achieved 2 out of the 7 days.
Now, taking a look at my personal data, during baseline of 18 days, I had an average of 2,121 steps. And I had my recording of my steps I used with my iPhone on the Health app. And so for that to function as a true pedometer, you have to have your phone on you at all times. And during baseline, we were not supposed to do anything extra to increase or fluctuate any kind of physical activity to ensure that intervention would have been effective or to be effective. My weekly goal was then averaged from my baseline, and I was supposed to either meet or exceed that for the 4 days. In the phase 1, I had an average of 1,454. That was my goal, and I achieved and exceeded well, as you can see in my graph, for that entire week. And then so I was able to increase for the second phase of intervention. The second week, I had an average of 2,995 steps that I was going to go for, and you can see that a few of my days were off, but I met the...
As you can see by my graph, my daily steps varied a lot. I don't work full-time during the summer because I'm a teacher, and instead only work 3 days a week at the barn. Also, I adopted a dog during baseline, which I think influenced the amount of walking that I did each day. My baseline average was 11,067 steps, and my baseline average for the last week of baseline was 12,608 steps, which then served as my goal for the first phase of intervention. And during the first phase of intervention, I was able to meet my goal for 4 of the 7 days. My average for the first week was 11,754 steps per day, which then served as my goal for the second phase of intervention. During the second phase of intervention, I only met my goal for 3 of the 7 days. In my opinion, the steps that I took each day varied a lot due to the days that I worked versus the days that I did schoolwork most of the day, as well as the weather each day. On days that were super hot, I was a lot more likely to let the dog into the yard rather than to take him for a long walk, which impacted my steps for the day. Also, on days that were super hot, I was more likely to go to the pool for exercise, and I don't wear my pedometer when I'm in the pool. Overall, my average number of steps each week did increase from baseline to intervention, though.
Our study had a few limitations to consider. First of all, the time constraint. This study was conducted over a 32-day period. We were unable to collect staggering baseline data due to the time constraint. The study that was emulated had a return to baseline design that was not able to be conducted. There were also many confounding variables that we found throughout our study. During our project, a member had bought a dog. Thus, her steps increased dramatically due to the walking of her dog. There were also different materials used by each participant. Each pedometer was completely different. Thus, this would impede the accuracy of steps for each participant. Some of our participants used an Apple Watch, and others had used their phones. When different pedometers were used, they have the possibility of not being calibrated the same, and some pedometers are not able to be carried around at all times. Some people may have set down their phone or even left their phones when they were going to the pool or another activity, which would also be a confounding variable, especially here in Florida. Finally, our last limitation would be only the use of verbal reinforcement and performance feedback via text message. This communication was the most convenient for our daily lives, but it might have been more effective for us to use other forms of reinforcement, such as maybe weekly contingencies, maybe tangible reinforcements, or even FaceTime interactions through video or through chat. All in all, more research needs to be done on different types of reinforcement and their effectiveness and how it would affect the effectiveness of the study.
To begin our literature review on the benefits of daily movement, I would like to start by presenting a study that connects physical activity and children with ASD, since this population is of specific interest to those of us in this class. The effect of physical activity on academic engagement and executive functioning in children with ASD was published by Sarah Nakatin in the School Psychology Review in 2019. This study utilized a multiple baseline single-case design on 3 school-aged children with ASD. The independent variable in the study was jogging for 12 minutes with a 5-minute cool-down walk. The dependent variable being measured was the student's academic engagement, executive functioning, and the social validity of the treatment. Physical activity has been recognized as an evidence-based practice for use in children with ASD to decrease maladaptive behaviors and increase desirable behaviors. The National Professional Development Center on Autism Spectrum Disorder has classified physical activity as an EBP. The results of this study show that there was an overall increase in academic engagement. Many students showed improvement in their participation in class activities, as well as receiving better scores on assignments following physical activity sessions. Results from this study also showed that physical activity had an immediate effect of improvement on aspects of academic engagement and executive functioning in these children with ASD.
In recent decades, obesity has increased tremendously. This increase has made it paramount to conduct research on how to increase physical activity. This study by Donaldson and Norman researched the effects of goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback on calorie expenditure. Goal setting, self-monitoring, and feedback have been replicated in many studies and for a variety of purposes: to increase physical activity, to decrease maladaptive behaviors, and to increase attending, as well as many other behaviors. Goal setting, feedback, and self-monitoring include average previous performance and setting an obtainable goal, self-monitoring, taking responsibility for the data collected, and feedback, being provided verbal or written feedback from another to encourage the reach of that set goal. In the study by Donaldson and Norman, daily calorie expenditure was measured by using the Polar F6TM heart rate monitor. They used that data that was inputted by the participants and the heart rate measured to determine their calorie expenditure. During the intervention phase, participants wore heart rate monitors for the entire day. Each night, participants sent an updated graph to the experimenter. The experimenter would provide daily feedback and encouragement. This study concluded that all participants increased their calorie expenditure through intervention. All participants in our study would like to increase their physical activity. The study by Donaldson and Norman was simplistic in nature and easy to replicate. With the findings of the study, we were able to extract the daily reinforcer, goal setting, and feedback in the application of our study. This article also indicates that treatment fidelity was of the utmost importance in order to implement the intervention properly.
So one of the reviews that I had found was on self-monitoring as a mediator of weight loss in a SMART randomized clinical trial. And SMART just refers to self-monitoring and recording using technology, much like the study that we chose. They focused more on increase in awareness of the physical activity and how feedback impacted that. And so they use various modes of self-monitoring. They were paper diary, a personal digital assistant, much like the pedometers like we used with our study replication, and the daily tailored feedback. And so the measurements in this study focused on self-monitoring adherence, feedback frequency, and the outcome measure through the percentage and weight change from baseline to the end of the study, and this lasted over the course of 6 months. And it looked at the direct feedback on the weight change and the indirect effect that the feedback had on the weight change through the monitoring. So basically they were looking at the frequency of feedback and if that had any indication on increasing awareness in their physical activity and improving weight loss for these participants. The results showed for the participants who did not receive daily feedback had a lower mean of 68% compared to those who did receive daily feedback, who had a mean of 78% in self-monitoring. It supports the hypothesis that daily feedback was a more effective approach in having a success with the self-monitoring to aid in weight loss. Much like the study that we replicated, this had two parts that were very similar in increasing self-awareness, setting goals, and providing feedback, and the effects of all those coupled together and what they resulted in. And so I felt that this was another study that supported that these aspects of self-monitoring and adherence to goals are effective strategies towards weight loss or increasing physical activity.
A literature article that I reviewed was called Pedometers, a Strategy to Promote Increased Physical Activity Among College Students. This article was published in 2010 by Hackman and Minta. This study used pedometers as an intervention method with the aim of increasing awareness and motivation for college students to meet the recommended number of steps per day, which was 10,000 steps for this study. Participants were all undergraduates in college, and there were 49 of them who were between the ages of 18 to 41. They all received a Yamex DigiWalker pedometer. The baseline of this study was the same as ours. Participants wore their pedometers but were not able to see their daily steps during baseline. During intervention, they were able to see their daily steps and report them to the researchers. Following the intervention period, more people accurately estimated their activity levels and less people overestimated their activity levels as compared to their estimations during baseline. This indicates that the pedometers did increase awareness of steps. Also, 73.5% of the participants agreed that wearing the pedometers made them more aware of their physical activity levels. Overall, the findings of this study were similar to the findings of the study that we replicated. Both studies indicated that self-monitoring in the form of wearing a pedometer can increase the awareness of and the number of steps taken per day.
Another study I found, which was very similar to the study that we replicated, was looking at the effect of the pedometer-based physical activity interventions. This was just looking at the magnitude and direction that the effects of a pedometer, the use of a pedometer, had for increasing physical activity amongst participants. Now, this study looked at multiple age groups at one time, and so this posed to be a limitation for them as it's hard to judge the true effects of the pedometer. A thing that they mentioned in the study was the different physical activity levels that a child would have versus a person in their 60s per se. And so they saw more effect in looking at age groups together that were closer in age, and saw that they improved more. And this study, it served the goal setting in this study served to be the motivator, much like in the previous study that I had read. The weight loss was in itself a motivator, and in this study.
In conclusion, the average number of steps per day increased from baseline for all 4 participants during Phase 1. During Phase 2, the average number of steps per day increased from baseline for 3 of the 4 participants, but only increased for 1 of the 4 participants as compared to Phase 1 of intervention. Physical activity is really important for maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and walking is an easy way to be active. The results of the original study, as well as our replication, indicate that self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback may all be effective ways to increase levels of physical activity. Future replications of this study could be improved in numerous ways. One way is that there would be more time for baseline and intervention, which would allow more time for data to stabilize and for a reversal to occur. Another improvement would be having the ability to meet in person and by all of the participants using the same brand of pedometers. Future research on self-monitoring, goal setting, and feedback as it relates to physical activity could examine the impact of different variables such as children and pets and work on steps taken per day, as these were variables that we found to impact our levels of physical activity. Additional research could also examine whether or not knowing the person providing the feedback makes a difference. These are the references for our study, which include the original study that we replicated, as well as the studies we used for our literature reviews. Here is the contribution log, which indicates what each member did for our presentation. Thank you all so much for listening to our presentation.